I'm Daryl. Our group thing is on government surveillance. Our proposition is that there should be additional restrictions on surveillance by American intelligence agencies. The first claim is that the NSA is invading innocent civilians' privacy. A number of government agencies are partaking in this activity. This is a direct quote from the American Civil Liberties Union. Numerous government agencies, including the National Security Agency, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Department of Homeland Security, and state and local law enforcement agencies, intrude upon the private communications of innocent citizens, amass the vast databases of who we call and when, and catalog suspicious activities based on the vaguest standards. Not only is our information being observed, but it is being shared and causing disruptions for innocent people. Another quote from the American Civil Liberties Union on their article on privacy and surveillance. Innocuous data is fed into bloated watch lists with severe consequences. Innocent individuals have found themselves unable to board planes, barred from certain types of jobs, shut out of their bank accounts, and repeatedly questioned by authorities. Once information is in the government's hands, it can be shared widely and retained for years, and the rules about access and use can be changed entirely in secret without the public ever knowing. These actions have led to arrest and detainment under the Patriot Act, a U.S. law signed by George W. Bush in response to the September 11, 2001 attack, which gave law enforcement officials greater ability to track internet users and wire telephone calls. These actions have led to arrest and detainment under the Patriot Act and have caused unethical and outrageous arrests and detainments. A quote from Occupy Therapy on their article on the list of pros and cons of the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act has caused unlawful imprisonment. The Patriot Act allowed for the existence of Guantanamo Bay, a moment that may end up going down in infamy. Even those who supported the existence of Guantanamo Bay have been forced to admit that imprisoning those who were suspected terrorists without giving them due process was not what the Patriot Act intended to accomplish. It also caused unlawful detainment. In the months and years immediately following the September 11 attacks, many citizens, both American and foreign, were imprisoned at Guantanamo Bay for reasons that were not always clearly evident. Some of these prisoners were later proven to have no ties to terrorist cells of any sort. My second claim is that surveillance can and has been majorly misused. Surveillance has been used by law authorities in abusive ways. An article on what's wrong with public video surveillance by the ACLU quotes, "Powerful surveillance tools also create temptations to abuse them for personal purposes. An investigation by the Detroit Free Press, for example, showed that a database available to the Michigan law enforcement was used by officers to help their friends or themselves stalk women, threaten motorists after traffic altercations, and track estranged spouses. Institutionalized abuse may also occur from surveillance." Another quote from the same article says, "Sometimes bad policies are set at the top and an entire law enforcement agency is turned toward abusive ends. That is especially prone to happen in periods of social turmoil and intense conflict over government policies." The quote also gives an example. During the Civil Rights Movement and the Vietnam War, for example, the FBI, as well as many individual police departments around the nation, conducted illegal operations to spy and harass political activists who were challenging racial segregation and the Vietnam War. This concern is especially justified since we are in some respects enduring a similar period of conflict today. Surveillance also leads to misinterpretation of the good versus the bad guy. An article called "Surveillance Cameras and the Right to Privacy" by CBS quotes, Jim Harper of the Cato Institute says the problem with surveillance cameras and technology is they have a spotty record of preventing crime. Instead, he says they are an invasion of privacy. Harper says the danger is when videos are released of individuals who are not actually involved in a crime. Remember the nationally broadcast video of a man changing his shirt because officials first believed he could be the Times Square bomber. And my last claim, which is what I think would work, or what could be a what could solve this problem. Additional restrictions on surveillance would follow our Fourth Amendment rights and gain likability and trust from our citizens. Additional restrictions also means adequate monitoring on NSA officials. This is a quote from Carson Morey's RCL blog. It is also a misconception to believe that the government has adequate checks and balances in place to prevent the NSA from abusing its powers. As stated earlier, the secret FISA court was created around the same time as the president's surveillance program in order to oversee the actions of the NSA. Each time that data was to be collected, the agency was required to make its case to the court in order to have its actions approved. Interestingly, this occurred 1,789 times in 2012, and every single request was approved. It seems the court is less of a check and balance and more like a rubber stamp for government actions. Local law enforcement would also require monitoring on officer surveillance technology, like for example body cams. An article by the American Civil Liberties Union on when police body cameras aren't the answer, quotes, "It is vital that those departments have strong policies that ensure cameras are used for accountability, not surveillance. Departments must clearly require officers to record every investigative interaction with a member of the public. While constant recording could risk civilians and officers' privacy, departments can and must monitor compliance and discipline those who fail to record when they should." And last but not least, restrictions would ensure innocent civilians that their privacy remains that way. And a quote from Carson Morey's RCL blog says, "Ultimately, Americans have a tendency to be too trusting of the government to always act in their best interests. Although the NSA claims to be protecting our citizens from terrorist attacks, there is nothing stopping it from overstepping its authority and harming those same citizens. In fact, that could very well be happening already. Who knows exactly what the NSA does with all of our information? For that reason, Americans should stand up for their freedom before it's too late." Thank you.